General Eric Kurilla, Michael Eric Kurilla, who was my last commander of Ranger Regiment, who is now the CENTCOM commander, and who is a smart, good man.
Badass, good dude. You like him? You're a fan of this hire?
I mean, he was the commander of the Ranger Regiment.
So yes.
And then he has assigned Lieutenant General Patrick Frank to report back in 90 days, conduct about 24 more interviews, re-interview some of these people, maybe go a little bit deeper, hopefully, and conduct due diligence. And that's, thank you. And from everybody, thank you. Now, General Kurilla. Hi, everybody. This is John Koenig back with Real Veteran News. Pleased to introduce my friend Mason Baloo. I said that right?
You did. Baloo like the bear. Nobody gets it right ever. Don't worry.
Doing my best. And so Mason was actually the first person that was on videos on Unauthorized Media, previous show. He was on every single video for a very long time. But we have the new concept now. We did a couple with Mary in the beginning. Brandon was last week. And now Mason's on. And we're moving towards getting the 4-person show set up. Mason, would you like to introduce yourself?
Like John mentioned, I've been kind of contributing to, I guess, now Real Veteran News, previously Unauthorized Media, for the last few years. John and I originally met back in D.C. almost a decade ago. Two veterans grinding out the entrepreneurial thing in the D.C. area. That was kind of how we met, for those guys who don't know. And then my background in and of itself is I am the Air Force nerd of the channel. Since you got a lot of Army meatheads in here, it's good to have the Air Force come in. And my background, after being an Air Force Academy graduate, class of 2005, in addition, 3 years as a deputy commander at Air Force Central Command from 2005 to 2008, and then 6 years as a contractor for the Department of Defense at the Joint Improvised Explosive Device Defeat Organization. Since then, I've been doing entrepreneurial stuff on the side and just, hustling in the tech world in the private sector as well. Kind of my background, just to sum it up, would be general engineer with a specialty in software development.
Got someone who's good at talking about themselves. No, I'm just kidding.
I get fired so much that I have to be able to give that elevator speech every time I do a new interview. And I get fired because I tell people exactly what they need to hear, and most people hate hearing that.
And he's going to slip in that product placement too. Great. We're getting paid by the Coca-Cola Corporation.
Me and Nick Saban, he always has that on his podium.
Since this is your first show, do you want to just go a little bit deeper into your interests and beliefs and kind of just round out? We got your backstory, but what's your theoretical framework? Okay,
my theoretical framework, I feel like you could summarize it up best with these books here if you want to zoom in on these when you do the editing. But the 4 of them from top to bottom are Contrails, which is the Air Force Academy's guidebook for all freshman cadets. You have to memorize it.
It's basically his Ranger handbook, right?
Yes. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is, just as it says, if you're open to new things, you'll be happy. If you are closed-minded and you know everything, that you already know all the answers to everything, you're probably going to be miserable. 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, really good guidance for life and just being adaptable to the modern situation. And then the United States Constitution and other American documents, because damn, it's good to be an American. And I think the Constitution is possibly one of the greatest intellectual documents ever created, because it's all about protecting the rights of the individual while restraining the rights of the government. And I think one of the biggest problems of the modern world is the fact that most politicians, educators, and just totalitarian twats in general largely seem to be going to the government to try and exact new legislation to control people as opposed to setting them free. And then finally, on the tech side, I just love technology, and I think most people are doing it for the wrong reasons. They're in it for the money as opposed to me. I do it because I think it's awesome. I just love technology, and so to me, it's easy. I just play with it.
Mason wanted to do his prognostication about the economy that he's interested in, and we should probably also talk about the government shutdown.
Oh, well, I'm just a free market economist, and I do believe economic warfare is going to be a major component of future warfare, in addition to environmental warfare. I mean, scorched earth tactics have always been a thing. When you look at the interconnectivity of the economy and the environment and just the world in general, that's just going to be a major component of any modern war. If you look at Afghanistan, John, what was the tactic of Afghanistan to defeat the United States? Other than guerrilla operations, it was drain the treasury. What are we doing as a country? We're just draining our resources every day in the cause of social justice or social entitlement programs. So right now we are indebting ourselves, and that bill will come paid. Empires fall only when they stop being able to pay the bills, mostly of their soldiers who are there to defend them. And I just feel like we're approaching that precipice voluntarily. and the parallels to the fall of the Roman Empire to, all those memes that have been going around about asking your significant other about that, it's true.
All right. Well, I mean, I mentioned this last week, but I don't really subscribe to it. I think we could fall down. I don't think we have to. I don't think it's inevitable because we have all this technology that they didn't have. A lot of what happened to them is they got wiped out. 1/3 of the population in the empire was wiped out by plague. We haven't had something like that yet, so I think we're in a better position than Rome. But yeah,
did their enemies not deal with the plague?
Yeah, but I mean, the empire wasn't able to sustain without the population base.
Right, but everybody else had the plague too. They all had the people that defeated them overcame the plague as well.
Yeah, but they weren't the Roman Empire.
The U.S. will fall economically, and I don't think we're going to be completely destroyed. Like, I think the U.S. will still exist. I think we'll still be a powerhouse, but we're going to lose much of our prominence. And again, for the last 50 years, every single thing that's been taught has been about maximizing debt in business school. That's what they teach. And then globally, economically, the thing has been globalization, which is literally give away the United States' economic power to other countries in the name of global equality.
You're not maximizing debt.
That's what most of business school talks about. There are many classes, like when I got my MBA and when I got my econ degree, there are classes dedicated to calculating the exact what's called marginal return on investment. So you calculate the exact moment where investing in new product is zero benefit. And that's in a perfect world. So this is where business fails, is it's all, again, in isolation. Yeah, it's great if you can have a exact investment where you know the future and there's no shocks. But again, in business school, there's this thing called cyclical recessions, where it's like every 10 years, we just expect something to go to shit and everyone to, a recession to happen. It's a stupid thing to teach, to tell people to prepare for maximum risk or maximum debt without even thinking of risk, when another class in the exact same program of an MBA is going to also tell you, expect every 10 years, everything to go to shit.
They're not maximizing debt. They're optimizing leverage. And that's going to increase their profits.
Valid.
Everything all these finance guys do is increase their profits in the short term and then pass it off to some other dope before, it all comes crashing down, like the real estate and,
Correct.
all these things. And in China, people think that we're so different than China. We're not. Like, their real estate, Evergrande, is like collapsing. They just arrested the CEO.
What the U.S. is doing now, and what every economist has been saying, is mostly liberal, but even some on the right, say is inflate the money and pay it with future money that won't be worth as much.
The GDP is going up. All right. So like this simplistic, we print one more dollar and everybody else has dollars. I mean, everything is fluctuating every single day, up and down. You see, like cycles, like you said, and stuff like that. The American economy is the biggest economy in the world, and it is just like growing. We can keep spending more money. We don't have to pay down the debt. I mean, we can't spend too much money, but yeah, we're doing this dance or whatever, but like it's ridiculous.
Just because we haven't failed yet doesn't mean this is the best choice.
It's never going to happen because they're not going to like leave people hungry and dying in the streets because they don't want to borrow money against on the national debt. Like, they're just not going to do it.
Which is why we are slowly moving steadily towards a massive economic collapse. Now, again, I still think we're going to be one of the strongest countries in the world.
Mason?
We'll still be the number one country in the world.
Why are we going to collapse, Mason?
Debt. Well, there's going to be a reassessment of the US dollar, and it's going to have, over a 10-year period, 1,000% inflation. That is my prediction. I would say within the next 20 years, there will be a 10-year period of 1,000% inflation as a result of the mismanagement of monetary policy by the federal government, the Federal Reserve, ever since the repeal of the Goldwater-Nichols Acts by Nixon. So again, it doesn't mean that we're all going to die, but it does mean we're all going to have a lot of hardship, and it doesn't have to be that way. The problem is too many politicians have thought about, if we spend $10 billion on this program, it might have this outcome. But you know what it definitely has is a cost of $10 billion. And unfortunately, that $10 billion could probably be much better allocated by the market if individuals hadn't been taxed and had their hard work stolen from them by the federal government and the IRS. Instead, if those people had invested that $10 billion themselves in the way they value it, so it'd be actually market efficient as opposed to market inefficient, which anything the government does pretty much is market inefficient. Just because we're not collapsed yet, as you said, and just because GDP is growing, GDP would be growing much more if it hadn't been for all this stupid intervention by the government. Debt service alone is, I think, $5 trillion annually now. We're spending $5 trillion just on
It's not $5
interest.
trillion.
It's 20% of the national debt, the national annual budget is just to service interest, just to pay down the interest.
Yeah, but it's not $5 trillion. That's way too much. All right. Anyway, this is boring. Let's get on to Afghanistan. And Mason likes defending generals and wants to talk about General McKenzie. I did a video where General McKenzie did his farewell, like, I'm out. These are the last questions I'm ever answering because I'm a coward. interview on Special Report, and I watched it and reacted to his questions because I'm pretty mad at him because he's a loser general that failed us all, especially the people who died and a lot of the Afghans and everybody too. And he's just shirking off blame. But anyway, I'll let you go first, Mason. You saw what I had to say, but like, what do you think about?
So I did watch that video, and I would like to defend the general. Now, again, the general was imperfect. However, I think he did a better job than he gets credit for. So this is my assessment of the Afghanistan withdrawal. So first off, it was a failure by the State Department, and then they called the U.S. military and said, help us. So this four-star general had already gotten all his people out, and the State Department failed in its charter to protect American citizens abroad and needed the DOD to save the day and put the DOD in an untenable situation, and the general was forced to accept that despite protest. Once you accept that, you have to give the guy a little bit of credit in that respect. Then he goes in, and if it were me, my plan on the withdrawal, and again, could be wrong. If I were the four-star general in charge of that withdrawal and I had to take my men and women into harm's way, what I would say is we're going to cordon off the area. We're going to do our best job to ensure security of the airfield. We are not going to kill civilians. Okay? Like these people, when you think about it, it was an entire country fleeing the Taliban. The Mongols.
You're going to have to kill people. Like, let's be real. You're going to have to kill people, right?
Okay. I'm not here. Just let me finish. So when we're talking about establish security of the airfield, yeah, it'd be really easy if they just killed everyone who approached the airfield. Can't do that. Those people, as you saw, like there were the guy who fell off the plane, like he grabbed onto the landing gear and fell. Right? That's because the security was impossible to maintain. So what I'm trying to deliver here is, unless you kill Afghans as they flee the Mongols or flee the Taliban, it's impossible to maintain security. Period. Given that you're put in a bad situation and it's not possible to maintain security unless you kill innocents, which you're not going to do, what I would have said to my team, my men and women, is say, this is a terrible plan. It's the worst plan, but it's the best plan I can come up with. And that plan is we are going to maintain security as best we can until we get hit. And then we're out.
Okay.
And that's what you don't.
Ground Force Commander over here.
No, that's.
Some of y'all are dead. We're gonna like drag your lifeless corpses off this airfield, and then the rest of us are gonna go home because we don't want to be dead like you.
Correct. It's a terrible plan, but it's the best plan you can have given the mission that is a terrible mission. What else can you do? What you're gonna you can kill every Afghan that approaches the airfield without an escort. That would maintain security. Okay. You can't do that. So what do? You say we're gonna do our best we can, and then as soon as it gets to the point where hostilities are creating and it's actually we are getting wounded, or hopefully only wounded. Unfortunately, there were 13 killed. A lot more wounded on top of that.
So basically, under your plan, the same exact fucking thing would have happened because the 13 would have gotten killed, and you'd be like,
Correct.
I'm a pussy. Let's get the fuck out of here now. Because this doesn't even really matter. It's just political bullshit that the president told us to do. Because the president knew that they fucked up. So what they turned it into is like our measure of success is how many random Afghan motherfuckers can we airlift up out of here in the most chaotic and embarrassing situation possible, jack those numbers up so that these press people can go on TV every morning and be like, oh, we got 77,000 out. We were successful. We accomplished our mission. And it's like, you fucked the whole thing up.
And they had no plan of where to put them. But again, that was the State Department's fuck up, not the DOD's. The DOD did a decent job.
No one's even blaming the State Department. Mackenzie's not blaming the State Department. Why don't you shut the fuck up about the State Department, dude?
Mackenzie blames
It's just like a few people. They're so small. We're talking about the military. This is a military mission. Afghanistan is not a State Department mission, okay? Right. And the State Department didn't come up with the plan. Biden came up with the plan, and the generals co-signed his shit. Because they're fucking cowards and they won't stand up to the man.
Okay,
they should have just retired. They should have retired. Been like, this guy's plan's fucked up is going to cause some bullshit. I'm out. Here's this plan on CNN. And like later, but they don't want to do that because then they won't get the cushy job in Northrop Grumman.
No, here's the one thing I will caveat. There are some assumptions I made there. And what I would say is when they did the Bagram withdrawal, which everybody was like, that was a terrible idea. If when they did that.
They didn't say that to the president beforehand. They said it after the fact because they're so tough.
The president did not know we were withdrawing from Bagram. I'm pretty sure he was the one who told
them to do it. He forced them into it.
Right. The president forced them to withdraw from Bagram, but did not handle the State Department withdrawal. So again, it is a State Department failure. If the State Department,
what I'm saying is, fuck up about the State.
Secretary Blinken, the entire time, what was he saying? Was he saying, "I got it under control. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone"? That's his job.
What's the State Department going to do, man?
The State Department's job is to ask the U.S. government, ask the U.S. military to facilitate their request. If the entire time he was rejecting the U.S. military and saying, no, we're not going to do an evacuation, no, we're not going to get these people out, it is all entirely Secretary Blinken's fault.
Okay.
However,
McKenzie's not even blaming Blinken and the State Department. So just like drop it, dude. McKenzie, let's talk about what General McKenzie actually blames. So General McKenzie says he blames the catastrophe on August 26, 2021. The decision to not evacuate military and civilians at the same time. That is based on lies and false intelligence because they thought they had 400,000 people in the Afghan army. They didn't. They thought the Taliban wasn't going to take over for 6 to 9 months. So they thought they could do that slick exit and then they could leave it behind and then let it collapse later and be like, well, it was stable when we left. You know, once the Afghans were on their own, it went to shit. They didn't realize that the Taliban was going to come and roll their fucking ass up all the way up into Kabul in front of the entire world to see, humiliate you, humiliate all of us veterans that went over there, spent 2 years in Iraq and Afghanistan.
All right. So what I heard, I'm going to restate what you said and agree with you and say that I was a little bit wrong. And I would say that what you're saying is the U.S. military, the Department of Defense probably gave the State Department an inaccurate threat assessment that gave the State Department the belief that they could handle the withdrawal in the way that it was. And then when the DOD's threat assessment and intelligence was completely inaccurate, the State Department in itself they were poorly served by the DOD. Okay, I can see that. I would say, given what that argument, that it would be 50-50. Because the State Department still should have been like, let's get the fuck out.
The military was high on their own shit. They're like, oh yeah, we trained up all these Afghans. They're ready to go. They want to fight the Taliban. They want to go over to the Taliban. You're a punk. When
you just said that the general is not blaming the State Department, I'm just looking at the article that we're using here. Quote, I have a lot of regrets about how it ended in Afghanistan. I have a regret with the basic decision, which I think was the wrong decision. He's saying President Biden made the wrong decision.
He doesn't think we should have ever left Afghanistan.
Correct.
I agree with him on.
And I particularly regret that we did not choose to begin to evacuate our people, our embassy personnel, our American citizens, and our at-risk Afghans at the time we made the decision to bring in our combat forces.
That was Biden.
That could be that bad threat assessment like you mentioned, or Biden saying no, or the State Department saying no.
It's both.
All three. It's just...
Remember he wanted to do it on September 11th? And then when they're bringing the bodies home, he's checking his...
Joe Biden?
Yeah, he's checking his watch after every single casket's coming out. There's 13 of them, dude. Like,
Joe Biden's...
where do you got to be?
Joe Biden's a disgrace as commander-in-chief, in my opinion. Sorry. I feel like I shouldn't say that, but I'm not in the reserves or anything, so I'm allowed to. And I feel like it's my job to say it, to stand up for the active duty members. I mean, as commander-in-chief, he sent those guys to their death and then dishonored them when they were receiving their military burials. Like, it was his bad plan that got them killed. It was his fuck-up that got them killed. And then he didn't even have the courage to show them the honor that they deserved.
Then they want to wipe it off the news and say that we struck back at the terrorists by missile striking a young father with 7 kids around him. He's just bringing water home.
Yep.
And then going and telling the world that he's a terrorist and we just took out ISIS. Righteous strike. You asked me about Milley earlier. Righteous strike. Yeah. At least go up there and be like, we're going to figure out what happened.
That strike on that family man and that killed him and his children, that is the kind of stuff that makes me sick to my stomach, that makes me feel like we were the bad guys. We made the world a worse place.
I mean, accidents happen, but like to go on TV and say righteous strike, they're like, hey, they're saying it's a family. And he's like, nah, man, I got it on good authority. Righteous strike. In the Pentagon, on TV, in front of the whole fucking world.
I remember that.
You know what I mean? Because he knows that when it comes back around, it's going to be on the New York Times, and it was on the New York Times, but it's like not as much circulation as the initial thing, right? Because that's like breaking news. He's playing politics bullshit games. He hides behind this 44 years of service and all this bullshit, being like, I'm just some humble servant. Fuck you.
I'm not a huge fan of Milley. Don't get me wrong. But I just think he gets like all public servants, I think they get attacked more than they deserve. But like, again, Milley, like under his jurisdiction, like fitness standards have gone way down. DEI has gone way up. And I think I even saw some generals that I don't know if we're going to talk about it later or if it's just an article I read on my own.
This is a custodian. This isn't a man who has strategic vision about the force. He's just a bump on a chair.
His job, in my opinion, when Joe Biden announced the bad decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, it was his job to resign in that moment, and he did not.
Or sometime after, you're an idiot. I'm not doing this. Yes, that is my whole argument, is that like at least one of them or some of them should have resigned, but they thought they should have done the right thing. And if the president, you're at the end of your career anyway, but they want the job afterwards. They want to be they want to be in the club still. They want to be following orders.
What you're saying is they did not self-sacrifice.
Officers swear an oath to the Constitution, not to the president.
Correct.
So anyway, all right, so there's kind of like two main issues here. This whole system failed here. One is the ass backwards withdrawal that got us like bottled up in Kabul with surrounded by the Taliban, and then the political objectives
But
after
again,
that.
once you're in that situation, you can't just be killing all the people that are coming for help.
Obviously, we're not going to massacre the people around the airport, dude.
But that's what you mean. When people are saying like McKenzie should have done a better job of establishing security on the ground, it's like, how?
No
Kill
shit,
people?
motherfucker. All right, look, let me say what I fucking have to say here. All right, so
sorry.
the other part of this is that the suicide bomber, some people, witnesses, people on the ground involved, are saying that they had a description. They had intel on this cell. They knew what the guy was going to look like. They had him in prison at Bagram. They probably had pictures of him. Like, they know who this guy is. They know they can hear their cell phone calls. They got drones up. They got the CIA's got informants. Everything is focused in this area. 2 to 3 kilometers out from the airport is a hotel with ISIS-K in it, and they want to go out and strike it. They are not giving the authority to, and so General Chris Donahue reached out to the Taliban and asked them to hit it. How'd that go, General Chris? You know what I mean?
It's like the dumbest idea ever.
Fucking bullshit. Get the boys on a motherfucking heli if you have to. Otherwise, just drop a bomb on that motherfucker. Like, you're perfectly happy to bomb the family that didn't do anything. Just bomb the fucking hotel. And what are the Taliban's going to complain and be like, yeah, fuck you, sue us. Those Marines would be alive. That sergeant in the army would be alive. All the people who got maimed and wounded, Afghans and other service members, would have their lives back. We would have been preemptive.
It was 13 killed, but how many wounded? I don't think we've ever released that public number.
Usually, something like this, you're going to have like 2 or 3 wounded for every kill. So you're probably looking at a couple of those. And so the Pentagon did their investigation, didn't find any of this, even though these people like gave these testimonies. Then there was a report about it where these testimonies came out. And then they had recently Sergeant Tyler Vargas Andrews in March told the House Foreign Affairs Committee that his sniper team had positive identification on this guy that they thought was the bomber. They had been given a physical description of him, and they could have taken him out hours before this occurred. They could have shut the gate down. They could have given a description to those Marines, everyone out there, which like, okay, so McKenzie says they didn't have a physical description, which is like bullshit bureaucrat shit. He's like, nobody told me the exact physical description. So as far as I'm concerned, there was no physical description, even though everyone out there knew, except for the Marines at the Abbey Gate. If you had told them there was a suicide bomber coming at them, they all would have been peeled looking for this guy, and they would have fucking shot him, and it wouldn't have happened like this. I can almost guarantee that they were not given this intel. If McKenzie doesn't even know about it, how the fuck are the Marines at the Abbey Gate going to know about it?
So I agree with you on that. That's the two big things I would be against McKenzie is that kill chain decision of passing the intelligence on the guy who ended up being the ISIS-K suicide bomber. That's atrocious, if that's true. I believe it is true. Like, I do believe it was a failure of passing intelligence down to the lowest level.
Intel officers there said they knew ISIS-K was staging at the hotel 2 to 3 kilometers from the airport. They knew it days before.
Should have killed him. Should have taken out that strike.
And the fact that Donahue asked the Taliban to get him proves that they knew they were there. I mean, like, the proof is in the pudding here.
I think your statement of the generals being like, probably is like, well, I hadn't seen a photo of this guy's Facebook profile picture in the last year, so I couldn't. The bureaucratic excuse making, a lawyer giving General McKenzie an excuse.
It's called willful ignorance. He doesn't want to know. Because he knows if he knows all the intel, when they do come in, going to get all these questions about it. He doesn't want to know.
But I want to argue with you on one thing. You said if those Marines had been told that there was a suicide bomber coming towards them, they would have been more alert. Do you not think that they were told to expect suicide bombers?
They knew this was coming.
It's two things. We were doing videos at the time of this. And I even said, this is a target. They should expect a suicide bomber attack within
Everyone knew this.
Right, it's obvious. So I'm just saying, you got to, when you just mentioned, like, if they've been told, they obviously knew suicide bombers were a threat. That was our war. And then number two, you did, the final thought I would like to ask about positive identification of suicide bomber is how many other targets of interest were there? So if there were 5, okay, that's a pretty big failing. If there were 10,000, well, that's tough to filter through. You can say, like, yeah, they were aware of this individual and they did nothing. But okay, if you're aware of 10,000 individuals, you're trying to track 10,000.
I never heard any of them say that this was one of many. ISIS-K got one shot at this. They want to kill Americans. They got one shot at it. They're going to put all their eggs in that one basket to get the bang for the buck. They're not going to split their forces and try to like pick off an American here or there or whatever. They want the biggest bang for the buck, and they want payback for what we did to them and all this. You know, it's going to be all focused. Like, this was the terror cell. Like, yeah, there might have been some guys talking shit everywhere, but like, They knew it was coming at this gate. They could have shut the gate down, which they didn't do because they wanted to keep them coming in, because that gets the numbers up, which goes into Biden's thing of being like, look how many we got out. Right? We don't know who they are, but we got them out. I mean, Operation Who Are You? Like,
how many of those people are still in like a state of?
They're all here.
What? Oh, they're all here. They're not like in just like a holding cell still.
No, they went. I think they went to basically Bahrain, and then from there, I mean, they flew a lot of them to the U.S. Who else is going to take them? It's our war.
Yeah.
Like, these are our people, or like, and some others as well. And all their families.
If you watch the movie, I think it's a great movie to watch right now. I think it's The Revenant with Jake Gyllenhaal. I think that's a great movie for anyone to think about for the Afghan withdrawal, of just like the position we put a lot of those Terps in, and the fact that we did owe them the obligation to get them out.
Yes. I mean, we all had Terps and stuff like that. We all feel for these people, but like, you can't just use that to cover up all these mistakes. I mean, yeah, you got some good people out. You also left a lot of good people behind. And you obviously don't give a shit about the women, and you don't give a shit about the mission or all the people that died over there, or committed suicide back here after serving over there. They don't give a shit about that. It's like, oh, we're done. Let's focus on Ukraine.
The Bagram withdrawal is probably the dumbest strategic move the United States has done.
This is what happens when you have such an old man. Biden has this like thing with the generals. He's always had this dick measuring contest because he's on Foreign Affairs Committee and he was in the Senate for so long. And he like thinks that but he's not a military man, and whatever. But now that he, you know what I mean? Like, he kind of like popped up on top of them. Now it's like, oh, I'm in charge now. You're going to do what I had.
He's commander in chief.
It was like a fucking flex. The generals didn't want to do this. Obviously, they knew it was not going to go well.
But none of them resigned in the moment.
No, because they didn't think it was going to collapse immediately. They thought it would collapse after they retired and whatever. The Pentagon line on the bomber and the attack is that it could not have been prevented, because obviously they don't want to accept blame for that.
Of course, I'm going to say that.
The Gold Star families aren't buying that shit because it's like nonsensical. Like, of course you could have prevented it. It was one guy. You had all these fucking Marines. You've got all these fucking planes, missiles, satellites and shit. We give you all the fucking money you need, and they just want their kids to come back home alive. And you didn't do your job because Sergeant Tyler Vargas, who I believe more than Millie every day of the week, told the committee his sniper team was not given authority. They asked, who has the authority to take this guy out? They said, I don't know, and never got back to them. Like, that is dysfunction, and it resulted in these dead bodies.
Who's Sergeant Vargas' commanding officer? Whoever that person is the one who needs to be getting his ass chewed out.
That commanding officer wants to go home to his wife. He wants to pay his mortgage. He wants to go on to his next PCS duty. He wants to get his promotion. He wants his career to be normal. He wants to get a master's degree and live his fucking life. He doesn't want to have a pissing match with his officer in the middle of Kabul, in the middle of a fucking war, over some guy out in the middle of the street.
I just would like to know who the lieutenant was that let that request get dropped. I would say more than the general. I would say the lieutenant, like company commander, platoon commander, that didn't chase down that lead. That's the person who's probably more at fault. The other question I would have, obviously I was kind of like flippantly saying you can't be like mowing down the Afghan civilians, but why didn't we have better security procedures? We just finished a 20-year war where we had bases in all these locations and where we routinely had entry control points. So why were we not observing proper entry control point procedures?
Because it was chaos, dude. Did you see it on fucking TV?
I know. I was going to point that out.
They had no control.
I literally pointed that out at the very beginning of this video.
They were throwing fucking babies over the wire, man. Like, do you remember?
I literally pointed that out at the beginning of the video. I'm just saying, like, so I'm just trying, again, just playing both sides. What could we have done? And again, it was preventable.
You're saying it was
officers
preventable.
Are the ones to be blamed most in that situation for the tactically imperfect situation.
But you're saying they're lying. They're lying now. It could have been prevented. They're lying to the Gold Star families.
Correct.
Saying it couldn't have been prevented when they know damn well it could have been prevented. And these Marines and these intel officers and everyone's saying they damn well could have prevented, or they could have tried at least. And no one did anything because the system's fucked and it's all just political bullshit. So they're lying. And so when they put out their findings,
I agree.
They can't have any of these conversations in there.
I agree that the entire PR campaign was a lie.
Okay, so the PR campaign's a lie. So now, the journalists come out and they interview, and now there's these stories about how it could have been prevented. And there's these witnesses and stuff. So now General Michael Eric Kurilla, who was my last commander of Ranger Regiment, who is now the CENTCOM commander, and who is a smart, good man.
Badass, big dude. You like him? You're a fan of this hire?
I mean, he was the commander of the Ranger Regiment.
So yes.
And then he has assigned Lieutenant General Patrick Frank to report back in 90 days, conduct about 24 more interviews, re-interview some of these people, maybe go a little bit deeper, hopefully, and conduct due diligence. And that's thank you. Thank you. And from everybody, thank you. Now, General Kurilla.
At the very least, this needs to be a lesson learned for future evacuation operations. Because this is not going to be the last time that the U.S. military is going to have to evacuate a shithole.
Well, I mean, obviously they learned a lot, but I mean, it was just, it's just fucking shit. Marine Major Joshua Mass and wife Stephanie have adopted a 4-year-old Afghan baby girl that he pulled out of the rubble after a strike in Afghanistan, which killed most of her family.
It was a U.S. strike.
Yeah, it was us. And then it has been called an international act of child abduction. It's a pretty interesting story. The reason why I wanted to talk about it, even though it's not like national security news, is because I think this guy's super weird. Dude, put the fucking baby down. You're a Marine officer. Like, you're not here like shopping for fucking babies. Leave the Afghan babies in Afghanistan, go back home. And then what is his wife doing? I also don't understand that. I could understand a situation like this where it like literally is a kid that has nobody, but think about how many relatives this kid has. It's Afghanistan. Like, their families are huge. They got clans. Like, there are people that want this girl. And this guy's walking around, this major in the Marine Corps is walking around with this little girl baby in Afghanistan trying to take her home and saying that she is stateless and has like no family and stuff. I mean, it's just weird. She's in the custody with him right now.
I agree with you on this one. I think this Marine is really weird, one. And I'll go into some details on it. But two, it's get rid of our moral superiority bullshit. Why is this girl better? I mean, yeah, she's probably, if she's in Afghanistan, she's probably not going to have any rights anymore. So maybe better. But it's just, again, that thought that no matter what, being American is better. And I think, so that is a mentality that is probably demonstrated here. Like, somehow he's saving everything, which probably is. Because life under the Taliban for women is not good. The people trying to get the girl back to Afghanistan could just be Taliban operatives being like, no, we want everyone back. Want the Muslim girl back out of the hands of the infidel, which is legitimate.
It's her family.
It's legitimate.
Cousin.
I'm not
right.
Going into the actual details. When reading through the article, it mentioned how like repeatedly this guy did like a dad said no, go ask mom kind of thing. So it says like he was rejected and then he submitted it to a different adoption agency to get it approved. And this guy's a military lawyer, I believe. It said that like his job, he wasn't a grunt. He, I believe, is like a JAG.
Only a lawyer could fucking pull this one off.
So it's a JAG who deliberately manipulated the law to get this child stolen from her home country. So I think this is actually a case of an international abduction.
The raid happened in 2019 and the girl was a baby, was pulled out. He was able to remove the girl from the country and said the daughter was stateless, right? Came to Virginia, got a very friendly judge who's like an older man who didn't really probably understand exactly what was going on, didn't have good information, subsequently retired, but he signed the adoption order making it permanent. However, once things calmed down a little bit, the Afghans started coming to Mike Pompeo, this is during Trump times. Pompeo's staff worked to have the girl returned because he didn't agree with the guy having it. So then the girl was back in Afghanistan with her cousin and the cousin's wife. After the fall of Kabul in 2021, this guy Mass was on the phone trying to convince the family there to send the daughter so she could be getting better medical care in the United States. And these people are like Afghans. So for a sophisticated American, like working this, they probably could like be manipulated pretty easily. So manipulates them. They pass it to U.S. military personnel. He tells them U.S. military personnel that he has the authority to do this. U.S. military personnel bring it back to Virginia. He pulls out that adoption order, which has subsequently been voided in order to get the child released to him. This was in 21, drives back down to North Carolina with his wife, happy family. You know what I mean? Like, this guy, fucking weird, honestly. Like, I understand, like, the kid and everything like that, but, like, send some money, do something else.
But if you think about it from his perspective, and it's a crazy perspective, but let's just think of it, like, put yourself in their shoes, and it's crazy. But this guy probably thinks that he, probably like a Christian, saved a girl from great mistreatment. Maybe his wife can't have kids, or maybe they can't have kids. So now
obviously his wife can't have kids.
Satisfied their, now they have a family, and it's also somehow a feel-good story for them. But when you really look at it, it's like, no. You stole a girl from another country. And the only thing that she would ever know.
Yeah, she's got family there. I mean, this is ridiculous. She's lucky to be alive after that bomb.
Yeah.
The next article we want to talk about is Ukraine, Russia, modern artillery tactics going on out there. Because in this intense battle, Southeastern Europe, the new tactics and the new battlefield, it's very interesting. Fortunately, we don't have to be out there, but we are learning a lot from it, and the whole world is learning from the UAVs and everything. But artillery is very important. Obviously, Ukrainians are rocking our equipment, and the Russians, have their Russian-made equipment and other stuff that they've scrounged up. Mason, you actually, before the video, told me you liked this article. What did you like about it?
As an Air Force guy, my area of expertise is not artillery. So to me, it was really educational. I really enjoyed learning about like different methodologies, the different outlooks, and the different kind of tactics and doctrine used by the Ukrainians and the Russians. I just thought it was kind of interesting. And I guess the final thought, again, being an economist, I'll tie that in. It talks about how Russia's tactics were like mass. The Russians, it was just like, all right, since we're not very good at stuff, we're just going to send a lot of it. And hopefully, eventually, if you fire 1,000 rounds, one of them will hit. Whereas, we try and be more surgical. The economic analysis of that would be like, that's a very communist approach to a problem.
So starting off with this, we're talking about artillery here. So this battle, both sides, it's like a duel, artillery duel. And then you have this trench line and you have the ranges of the different guns and missiles, and they have to find each other and stuff. So what they say is there's 3 phases here. There's identification, which is identifying target. They're using UAVs, intel satellites, whatever. Tracking and deployment. That's like when the enemy shoots their artillery rounds at you, your counter battery radar is going to see that and be able to pinpoint where it came from. So then you can relay those coordinates to your batteries, have them shoot it there. So they have to move their equipment, but within a certain time frame. So you're getting into this, shoot and move type situation, mobility, and then the engagement, right? So that's like when you're actually launching around. So identification, tracking, deployment, and engagement. The ways to counter the enemy, like in a video game, Mason and I both play video games, just like Brandon. You either break their kill chain by moving before they can strike you back, or you kill them before they can strike you, right? Just like in a video.
In the end, artillery is where most casualties occur on the battlefield, I believe.
It depends on the battlefield.
True. Modern warfare, artillery is the most lethal weapon, at least modern conventional war. I think World War I, World War II, artillery was the most deadly.
Artillery is very important when you have these large formations of troops.
A couple things I thought was interesting is one, it said like the reload time, it was 3 rounds per minute for a couple of the artillery units. Again, looking at the Russian tactic of just like firing a ton of rounds and just getting as much force downrange as possible, as opposed to precision strikes, which is the modern way.
I mean, this is like a rounds thing. A gun is a gun. They have their dumb rounds, and then we have guided rounds that we've given to the Ukrainians. So the Russian round is Krasnopol guided artillery shell, which was supposed to be useful for them. But because of low cloud cover, electronic warfare, and poor performance, it's been erratic, inconsistent, and they have insufficient quantities. They do not have enough of these guided shells. That's why what Mason is saying, they have to use unguided shells and just mass fires, try to destroy their target because they don't have any other option. But they did mention, which is interesting, that at the beginning of the war, the Russians had a 10-1 artillery advantage, and they were shooting 50,000 rounds per day. Another intelligence failure of the Western military intelligence complex, Five Eye, NATO, all these people failing in thinking, one, that Ukraine was going to collapse in 48 hours, which it did not, and two, not understanding that what was going to happen was this artillery spindex. Basically, we're shooting up all the artillery across the world, just pouring it into Ukraine. It's just artillery, artillery, artillery. There's just not enough artillery shells out there to keep this going forever. And the Russians have also, to our great surprise, DIA, been able to create more artillery shells than we expected. They've been able to ramp up their production of these artillery shells. So they've got like lots of these dumb artillery shells. They're still in the game, but they have to sit further back because we gave the Ukrainians GPS guided shells. So they shoot 2 or 3 rounds, can get out quicker, and they actually hit their target. The Russians really can't defend, right? So the Russians are 20 kilometers behind the line. Ukrainians are 2 kilometers behind their line, and their rounds can go further than the Russian rounds, and they're more accurate. The Russians have to come up, shoot, and then basically run away before the Ukrainians can pop.
Wouldn't that increase advantage for Ukraine? Because I would think in winter there'd be less maneuverability.
Well, it's just going to freeze the front. They'll still be shooting each other and shit, but basically, the counteroffensive, the Ukrainian counteroffensive has been slow going all year. Russian offensive, whatever you want to call it. But supposedly they'd done a breakthrough and they'd widened the breakthrough a little bit. Russia, supposedly, is what the internet says, has been putting their elite airborne troops just like on the front lines, and also other elite troops just on the front lines, just like their fighters, just to like plug that gap, obviously, because they don't have anything back there to stop the Ukrainians after that. And they'll just roll up the lines.
And we're just sending artillery shells to them, and they're just hitting them.
They'll all roll up. The entire Russian army could collapse. Like if the Ukrainians get through there and they start turning the flanks, and if they can pour through there, these Russian special ops that are fighting there are getting like chewed up. And usually you do not use your special ops in this way.
What do we got as an end state here? Like, is it going to be stalemate, or are we going to just look at, if Ukraine breaks through, are we going to see this Ukrainian superstate emerge?
Ukrainian superstate?
Will Ukraine conquer Russian territory and become
I don't think they'll go into Russia, but the defeat will politically destabilize Russia to the point that anything could happen. If they like just get pushed the fuck out of Ukraine after losing all those guys, spending all that money, all the hardships and everything, and just get humiliated like that. They get beat by the fucking Ukrainians.
Then Putin's dead.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, it's going to be chaos in Russia. It's totally unpredictable. Putin went to North Korea. North Koreans have a lot of ammunition. If you try to get ammunition from them, they're using drones. They've been suffering from a lot of friendly fire because they have bad radios. Their radios don't work very well, and they're drunk all the time too. Artillery units, they don't have any rounds, so they just give them a rifle and they're like, go up with the infantry.
Several friendly fire incidents from the Russians where
Yeah.
and one was like, I'm gonna come back there and kill all of you. It's like, all right, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, if you just accidentally killed all of his best friends.
Yeah, well, his whole unit. I mean, you heard what that guy said. He's like, we're all dead.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably bleeding out anyway, too. F-35 strategy. I know Mason loves beating up on the F-35.
I do.
Just to recap, F-35, Joint Strike Fighter, bloated program famously over budget and over schedule from Lockheed Martin, $1.7 trillion program, far beyond program goals, behind schedule, sky-high long-term operational maintenance cost. That's just more money going out the door. Can you imagine that these government contractors built a plane that was going to cost a lot of money to maintain? Can you imagine them doing that? These planes, their capability rate is at 55%, which basically means you need two of them to cover the operational time of one regular plane. It doesn't have as many problems. So it basically doubles the cost of the whole fucking program. Because you need two planes. Normally you would need one. This is like one of the biggest ripoffs.
That is the best Army math I have ever heard in my life. And I mean, it was exactly correct. I'm not insulting you.
Roughly. I mean, it's not exact. Apparently they've built 450 F-35s so far. This is historical. I mean, they have new planes that are going to come out. Eventually this will go away. But we need to learn from this. What did you learn from the F-35?
In the end, I think we can find some good out of it, but I think I've always thought it was a bad idea. A demand for increased interoperability. I think the goal is also to create that single platform that then, we could do combined operations, which means international operations, like work with Israelis, work with the Brits, and all have the same stuff. That'd be nice. But the cost is too great. And so also, when you try and do too much, you end up not being able to do anything. And I think that's the problem. The other thing is warfare, there's a lot of specialization in air power. So you have what's called air superiority tactical fighters, and those go in and they gain air superiority. Once you have air superiority, then you can use your air superiority to control the battle space with things like a Spectre gunship. So the fact that the JSF can do multiple things, who gives a fuck? What we needed to do is achieve air superiority so that the non-fighting aircraft can then do what they do. The F-22, in my opinion, is better for the mission of achieving air superiority and then enabling everything else to do its job. What we should do, double down on the F-22 and double down on Spectres and bombers, whatever the modern bombers are, instead of getting the JSF, and just abandon the JSF and take the lessons learned, the engineering learned as just that. It's a sunk cost. Let's get away from it. Let's use our better resources, our more specialized assets to do the jobs that they need to do, and accept that the JSF was a bad decision based on bad doctrine.
Ripoff. It wasn't a bad decision. It was a ripoff. Dude, it's a ripoff.
Yeah, well, that's a bad decision. The JSF needs to be abandoned.
The irony here is they thought this plane was going to save money. That's what they said. They were like, we're just going to make one plane that does everything. That way we don't need two planes. We're going to save so much money. We're going to be rolling around in all this money we saved. Wrong.
I'd rather have an F-22 followed by a Spectre gunship.
Whatever the mix is, I mean, the program is a failure.
Wouldn't you? Come on.
Part of the program is a failure.
What is the one asset that every ground infantry individual wants overhead? A fucking Spectre gunship.
Yeah, but you can't run that during the daytime. We need programs that don't fail. And part of the reason why this failed was like everybody put their eggs in one basket. It was like this thing that like had to happen. They should be making multiple planes, more planes, different people, different companies that are not connected, that aren't all integrated by one giant prime led by these troglodytes with spreadsheets. Just innovate, like build more planes, I understand they're like, oh, we can save money on this. This is stupid. You just fucked it up. You went away from the entrepreneurs. You handed this boondoggle to these shills who just patched some bullshit together, handed it off to you, took your money and ran. And they're laughing all the way to the bank. And we got a 55% capability rate. $1.7 trillion. Who's held accountable for that? And what's going to happen with the next one? They're just going to do the same goddamn thing. Because they think this worked. They're just going to like massage around the edges. Because they'll be like, oh, well, we'll cut a little red tape next time. Or we'll add a little more competition. Or just, move around the edges a little bit. But like the core problem here is this procurement system is not working.
Well, I think that also the procurement system was challenged in a unique way on this one. right? Because usually our procurement system is like US doing stuff for the US. And then once we do it so well, we sell it to other people. But in this case, we're like, in advance, let's work with all these other countries. In like the project management world, it's scope creep, right? They probably had an immense amount of scope creep. They had stakeholders that refused to compromise, and they set themselves up to fail based off of the charter of the program, not necessarily the technology.
Fuck up. It's a big fuck up. These people should not be allowed to make decisions like this at this level. I mean, there needs to just be a new system.
This example is an example of this program failing.
No, it's a groupthink thing. They get into a group thing. All these Air Force generals get into some room. They'll start patting each other on the back. No one wants to step out of line and be like, this isn't a good idea. We can't do this. We can't do that. This is too expensive. This won't work.
So the Air Force is run by fighter pilots, not bombers, not cargo aircraft. Fighters. So you got to realize the JSF, there was probably a lot of fighter pilots who were just being like, it would be so amazing if we also had this, if we also had this. And they probably didn't really think about trade-offs. But then again, most fighter pilots are really smart dudes. So that's probably me being disrespectful to them.
This isn't a fighter pilot thing. Fighter pilots are fine. This was a budgetary hack that all these people, it was an idea that everybody had was we'll all make one plane and put all our eggs in one basket. The next topic we're interested in is a delay in DoD rolling out AI tech. We've got Jacob Helber, who is the commissioner of the U.S.-China Economic Review Commission. And he cites a cultural rift, says that we are decades behind and that the soldiers don't have the leading edge technologies. He says that Capitol Hill thinks legally, because they're all lawyers, logically, mathematically, private companies that want to do business with the federal government have to, essentially hire experts to prove to the federal government they are good enough to work with the federal government. It's crazy. It's just a way of blocking people out to where we don't really want the civilians in here because we want to keep all this like government money that's coming in, dish it out to our friends, dish it out to our people. They don't want all these civilians coming in here and showing them up. China is outcompeting us on every front and we need to act now. Welcome to the party, Jacob. It's 2023. Where was Jacob a couple years ago? I mean, where were all these people years ago? Come on, this has been going on for so long. They're about to overtake us on so much stuff. Now we're speaking out?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, obviously, as long as Joe Biden is president, we will lose in this regard. The only reason you can say that is, who is our AI czar? Kamala fucking Harris, who probably can't even write a single fucking algorithm of the most simple bit of software humanly possible. So as long as Kamala Harris is our AI czar, we are only demonstrating that we do not take it seriously at all.
All right, okay, let's just break that down. If Kamala Harris is doing it or not, does it really fucking matter?
Yeah, leadership. Leadership is one of the most important things in the world. It's never valued, but it is the most important thing.
That's like the whole country. We have a military, civilian tech. I mean, what are you talking
everywhere? About? So Kamala, like you need leadership on the country level, but then if you're going to be the AI czar, you need to be getting in there and giving AI leadership. Where do we want AI? What is the first thing you want us to be automated? Is it DOD? Is it Department of the Interior? What I would actually say our infrastructure. The first thing I would want to do is try and work on highways, probably, if I were Kamala Harris. Like automation of the U.S. highway system. Maybe if you increase the efficiency of stoplights by 1%, that would have a bigger impact on GDP than any fucking tax law. AI is the way to create enhancements for the entire country with just small changes. But as long as Kamala Harris is providing leadership and direction to tell them how to best improve AI in the United States, we are fucked.
Come on, dude. No one gives a shit what Kamala Harris is doing.
Right. Imagine if I were the vice president right now and I were the AI czar. I would be going into each one of those agencies and be like, hey, this is some AI that would be
You're not the AI czar. You're not Kamala Harris, dude. Shut the fuck up.
I'm saying if I were, we would be much better off.
Why is this whole fucking video about Kamala Harris now?
She's the AI czar and we're talking about AI.
This is the dumbest shit ever. Okay?
She's the AI czar in America.
She has nothing to do with DOD's delay in AI tech. They just made her the AI leader like a couple months ago. This has been going on for years. Like, why are you obsessed?
I'm just saying.
On Kamala Harris. Like,
why are you not agreeing with me on this one?
Because it's about DOD. It has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. You just hijacked the whole video to complain about Kamala Harris for fucking 5 minutes.
She's the AI czar in America.
No one cares. It's just a political title. It's a waste of fucking time to talk about this.
First, again, as you mentioned, that they
have anything useful to say on DOD delay in AI tech that does not involve Kamala Harris?
I'm working on it right now. You're still being mad.
Go ahead. Spit it out.
So, two things from this article that I liked. So one, you already mentioned it. That's why I wasn't going to say it. But it's, the primes, they're going to keep out the best talent probably. And a lot of the best AI talent's going to go to places like Facebook as opposed to the DoD because that's what they think is cool. Especially the young kids, they value social media and a lot of them think the DoD is evil. So that's something you have to overcome. And that's kind of the recruitment challenge. while we're failing in recruitment, we're also going to fail in AI. Then the second thing I thought from this article that was really interesting and was contrary to what you and I have discussed on this channel in the past. Everything that Xi Jinping is doing, quote, points to an intent to go to war, end quote, Helberg stressed. That is the first time I have heard that.
They know we won't fight them. They know we're not going to fight them. They're like, we're ready to fight. You're coming over here? Okay, I don't care how many people die. Like, they know we're not going to fight them. U.S. autonomous military projects. I thought this was interesting. The article that I was reading about this had Steve Blank leading this national security AI organization. I think it's great. I learned a lot from him from his YouTube videos on entrepreneurship. Mason should probably watch them. He's good. I'm glad that he's working with the military, doing stuff like this out in California, out at Stanford. And he says that this autonomous military thing is like crossbows to guns, cavalry to tank, which I don't really agree with, but he's not a military man. I don't agree with that because we've had robots for a long time. We haven't had the AI so that the robot can control itself. Going from crossbows to guns is not a change in equipment. It's the same robot we probably would have had years ago. Now we have AI so it can think for itself. So I see it a little bit differently, but he's trying to just make a point. All nations will eventually get here. And he talks about the replicator program, DoD replicator program, cutting red tape, which I talked about last week with Brandon. Mason, what do you think about replicator program and the other autonomous military projects?
I think you're completely correct. I think it's the future of warfare. Like, think about route clearance with drones would be awesome. I mean, I know we already do that in some ways, just if we can enhance that capability. And then, as you mentioned exactly, AI is the key to making that happen. Right now, they require constant monitoring by an individual. In addition, as we talked about in the Ukraine artillery discussion, when you don't have the AI, that opens up additional countermeasures, right? Because as you're sending the signal to the drone of what to do, somebody can interrupt that signal and attack that signal. But if the drone is a self-operating item, that's no longer a threat. So not only will AI improve the capability of them to actually function better, it will also reduce threat and make them more just better.
Smarter.
Scary as well, because once again, one bug in code, that's how the genocide happens.
I think it's pretty obvious that China's been doing this like replicator, large numbers of drones. They love fucking drones over there. The idea of having large numbers of drones fighting us over the Pacific is probably their idea. We probably got it, Kathleen Hicks, from some intel report being like, hey, China's going to make 50,000 of these guys. We better do some replicator thing. And they're trying to figure out how to do this. They don't even know how to scale this. This isn't even their tech. They just want to use civilian tech, integrate civilian tech. And they're like, oh, we have to scale this. How are you going to scale something that's not yours? This is put on by DIU, Defense Innovation Unit at California, whose mission is to integrate with like that Silicon Valley, try to bring some of that tech in the military. Have not been successful. I don't think DIU has been a successful outfit. Have they had any wins? I don't really know. They are going into a new phase of it, which probably signifies they weren't successful before if they're getting revamped. But they are, I think, getting embedded more in the units and stuff like that, which I think is good rather than just having a bunch of officers sitting in Silicon Valley having meetings with tech CEOs.
We haven't lost a single of the artillery units that we've deployed to Ukraine, I believe. So that is, in a lot of ways, some Ukrainian training, but some of that's got to be our targeting algorithms. So that's got to be a win for whoever did that. But that's probably old. That's probably more legacy than new.
This artillery battle in Ukraine is not being driven by AI. They have drones. The next Ukraine, what we're dealing with here, replicator and whatever the Chinese are doing, is going to be Ukraine plus AI. Ukraine is like dumb drones, like a guy with a little joystick. Yeah. This is not going to be dumb. They're just going to kill you instantly.
And because it's going to be programmed for pure lethality. Anything it sees will probably kill, including like whales. Like just anything, they'll just attack.
I mean, it can distinguish things, but I mean, you know.
The thing I would like to say on the future drone warfare, if you look at the hypersonic program, right, when we did the videos on hypersonics, you mentioned the Chinese tactic of hypersonics is they've launched like 200 hypersonic tests in the last year, I believe, something like that.
They like doing a lot of stuff. They like having high numbers. We don't know what's happening.
Well, they have more resources than we do, whereas we might have 4 tests.
Yeah, but,
and their tests probably aren't as in-depth, aren't as advanced
as apples to apples.
Think of that exact same scale on the drone program, 4 to 200. That has to be our expectation.
Well, I mean, can we make more drones than them? I mean, I don't know.
We can't. We just have to have them be better.
Our supply chains are integrated. They need our supply chain. We need their supply chain. Like, they need the microchips. We need the rare earth minerals. They need food from Australia to feed Chinese people. I mean, The idea that we're going to be able to sever and fight with these people is not realistic. Anytime, probably in the next 5 years. It's going to totally fuck up both of our economies.
That's why it won't happen, I don't think. That's why I was surprised by that quote that they're preparing for war. I don't think they are. I think they're preparing to just survive.
Depends on who the president is. I mean, I think if it's Trump, there won't be. But with Biden, I mean, look at his performance in Afghanistan. Like, this is their chance. Of course they're going to do it.
No one respects Biden. So
of course they're going to do it. You know, Trump's going to call him up, cuss him out, you know, send him a horse head. I mean, like, look how he's acting, man.
Send him a
like,
horse head.
He's not gonna fuck around with these people.
I love Trump for a lot of things, but I'm just agreeing with you. The one I love about Trump, when he dropped the Moab, the mother of all bombs, just for the shits and giggles of it.
I just dropped the Moab today.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'd be on the plane too, like rubbing it.
Yeah,
I'd be like, you're gonna make a big boom.
Hey, little buddy, I'm so proud of you.
I know. Take that, ISIS training camp.
To agree with you, like, I guess it will depend on who the president is in 2024 as to how fucked it gets.
Pentagon Awards, first set of CHIPS Act awards. They've awarded $240 million to 8 regional hubs, approximately $15 to $40 million each. They're talking about a microelectric commons and a lab to fab concept, which sounds like what they've been doing in China for the last 15 years straight. This is like Shenzhen, but now we're going to do it, throwing all this money at the problem. And we always do great when we're throwing money at the problem. Remember the F35 just a few minutes ago? This actually isn't even that much money. These regional hubs will be focused on different aspects, and they're in different parts of the country. Electronic warfare, secure computing at the edge, Internet of Things, AI hardware, 5G and 6G wireless, quantum, and other. I think if it's just infrastructure, it's fine. If this is supposed to be innovation, I don't see the word innovation in here anywhere. I think this is like domestic military manufacturing capability, but not innovation. But I would like to see more innovation work. But I think this is just so the military can build their own shit, which is, I believe that. I believe in that.
I agree. I think we need more manufacturing. When I read this, I thought this was the most brilliant, only just more of it. I like the fact that it's dispersed across the country. I like the fact that each one of them hopefully will be choosing who they invest in. The other thing I thought was it just wasn't enough. But this is exactly the right plan for dispersing the investment across the country. I thought it was great.
That's a Congress thing. I think for innovation, you need to create a centralized place. You have 8 shitty innovation hubs that nobody gives a fuck about, or you have one big, beautiful innovation hub like Stanford and Silicon Valley.
Or DARPA.
DARPA doesn't innovate. They're just applying technologies that other people came up with. All the innovation is happening in Silicon Valley. And DARPA is just run by the bureaucrats. Everything is run by bureaucrats. There's no innovation happening anywhere. They have all these offices in all these intelligence agencies and in every service and every government agency. Oh, the innovation office or whatever. It's a piece of shit. I was in the innovation office at Defense Intelligence Agency. It was a fucking piece of shit. It had some random fucking computers. Nobody was in there. And it just had like a piece of paper up on the door that said Innovation Lab. It had no special software and nothing. It was just a fucking joke. I went in there with my friends. We were just like laughing.
But somebody put on their resume that they created the Innovation Lab.
I stood up the DIA Innovation Lab. I put all 6 Dell computers in there and vacuumed the floor. We're on our way now. I see innovation as a problem. I do think we need to have this manufacturing capability. If this is manufacturing, fine. That's fine.
The number one thing we've talked about, how many times we discussed the fact that chips are made in Taiwan, right? I know very little about this semiconductor chip market. I'd like to learn more. But my understanding is that is a national strategic risk to our capability, both economically and militarily. If this is the first step in investing and creating that capability to manufacture that here, that is the perfect idea. And then again, going back to my hatred of politicians, again, all that's really doing is reversing the decisions they've made for the last 50 years to outsource and pursue globalization. So it's just really fucking funny that for the last 50 years, we paid the bill for them to outsource and do globalization. We did that in the forms of tariff laws and modifications to international relation laws. And now we're going to pay that bill again to remove that capability from abroad and bring it back home. That's why the American taxpayer, we just get fucked.
Well, yeah, they sold us out. So they did the globalization, all these things, the masks, the ibuprofen, everything they shipped off overseas to save a little bit of money on their spreadsheets. Sold us out. It didn't take one moment to think how it would affect the national security of the country and the pandemic and everything. Just totally sold us out. Opened up our markets so we get all this cheap labor, all these cheap Chinese tires, all this bullshit, destroying American lives for decades while we're doing this free trade shit while some guys that went to work. Then these same assholes take our businesses, like our big, like powerful American businesses, enter into these small, fragile, developing countries and just wipe out domestic industries, wipe out domestic jobs, and totally leverage the advantage of the American machine to just dump our shit on them, making us a little bit of money, but then making them hate us and making us look bad. So they're ripping us off, making us look bad all over the place, selling us out, getting rich on their own, and they just want to keep doing it. That's the system.
Bring jobs back, America.
There is AI regulations coming. Chuck Schumer is the heavy-handed approach. He's the one who's, jerking off Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and all these AI guys because he wants access into their powerful world and all that. Bolster his politics and his economics and everything, and to get attention for himself and to put himself at the center of something that is very important. John Thune, Amy Klobuchar have bipartisan come together to develop a light touch AI bill, which I appreciate, which doesn't have a lot of details right now, but would be like light regulations that would only mitigate the riskiest applications of AI. I agree with this. I don't want heavy-handed AI regulations. What do you think, Mason?
Two things. I agree. I want it light, and like self-assessment I was okay with. I'm against most regulations. So like this scares me a lot because as a software developer, somebody could just say like, oh, he's writing AI and they could just shut my company down. And I don't like that risk because my video game has AI in it.
They'll prevent you from selling a product that uses AI unless it's certified as X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and that just scares me. I don't like that. However, I do think that we need some regulation. One component of it, like it says, the most dangerous AI. What does that mean? Because what I think would be dangerous is a stock trading algorithm. I think that's terrifying. What they did was they did a test. I think the CIA recently did a test where they showed images, an AI-generated image of the Pentagon being attacked. And as a result, the AI bots at many banks dumped stocks. So the CIA did a test, just an exercise, and it caused a shock in the real world stock market. So that kind of AI is petrifying to me.
There's safeguards in the stock market, and people...
8% of the stock market fails in a day. The stock market shuts down. That's the safeguard.
They have more than that. The people in charge of these companies want to make money, so they'll adjust quickly. They don't want to lose money because of a fake video. Biden has been trying to remove China from the electric vehicle green supply chain, which we're really talking about the batteries. China is the leading producer in the world of rare earth minerals, which are extremely damaging to the environment to produce, but in China, they don't care. And so we've been happy to just buy these from them, and they've been happy to let us be dependent on them for rare earth minerals. Biden goes and he gives a speech saying, we're bringing critical supply chains and tech home, but that is impossible. And they basically had to come out and be like, yeah, we can't do this. In the Inflation Reduction Act, they had appropriated $8.5 billion to counter China with regard to green domestic energy supplies, which essentially we're talking about battery minerals that we need for electronics. That's apparently not enough. We're not going to have any batteries if we fight these people. And they know it. And they did this on purpose. Them and Taiwan have both been manipulating us for decades. Taiwan with the semiconductors, them with the batteries, them with this stuff, all this stuff. It's all just a game. They're just setting us up. Like we are the dummies. What do you think, Mason?
So I think you just said my point about globalization. They've been doing that for 30 years, giving away our capability in the interest of cheaper costs and helping the world. You mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, which is obviously a misnomer because it creates inflation. And then so as he's spending money only creates inflation. I thought that was hysterical to spend money to reduce something. It doesn't make any sense.
Everybody finds it nonsensical. But it is the name of the law. In China, they rushed to the EV market early. Making electric vehicles isn't that hard. It's easy to make shitty, cheap electric vehicles. We didn't want to do it here because of the oil companies and because the auto factories didn't want to switch. Elon Musk, when he created Tesla, and he was the first successful car company to enter the American market in 100 years. That changed everything. It forced them to compete, and then we're going to electric vehicles. Then you also have Green New Deal type people, the environmentalist type people. They want the electric vehicles, even though it comes from a dirty power plant and it doesn't make that much difference. Electric vehicle, different than full self-driving, autonomous, AI-driven vehicle, which is important. I personally don't think it matters if you have gasoline in your car or some batteries. I mean, maybe there's one's a little bit better than the other, but that's not going to change our life. My life will not fucking change if I have an electric vehicle. My life will change if I have a car that drives me around and can go places and I can just be like, hey, go to the grocery store, pick my shit up and come back. That will change my life. I don't give a fuck about these electric vehicles, but at the same time, they are coming and we have to be able to compete with these people. They're out competing us because they're going to get Germany. They're going to cover the whole global EV market. Just like we used to sell our American cars all over the world, they're going to sell their Chinese electric vehicles all over the world. And they have most of the sales right now.
So I would say one of the big things, again, I'm not expert in batteries, but my understanding is solar power, batteries, it's nothing new. It's been around since the 1800s, I believe. I think like the first solar panels were in the 1800s. They have never been taken to scale because they're not as good. Most of these subsidies are a complete gross misuse of resources. All it does is create deadweight loss and invests in technology that has proven to be ineffective.
The environmentalists would say that it reduces carbon emissions, and these investments would reduce carbon emissions and begin our transition to electric vehicles and stuff, which we know that eventually we're going to have to use electric vehicles.
I'm guessing yes as well, honestly. So like one of the big things is you can measure the capability of like a species based off its capability to harness its energy. When it comes down to gas, like a gas powered car, it's like only 30% of the energy is actually utilized, like 70% is lost. And so I do not know what the future most effective consumption will be, probably electrical. So that's why I think it's good to keep investing in this because it'll pay benefits in the long term. At the same time, if China's going to do that investment for us, let them do it. And then why don't we steal from them for once? Yeah, but I mean, eventually let them invest in cheap EVs for 50 years until the EV technology gets to actually be efficient. And then let's steal it from them.
Yeah, but they'll have all the customers and all the supply chains and everything set up, and we'll be totally boxed out.
Maybe not.
A lot of things could happen. It's just like I would like to see us not lose this market, this new global market.
I mean, I think we should invest in it as well, but at the same time, it's been proven to be ineffective for 100 years. So it's unlikely that it's suddenly going to change.
It's less efficient than gasoline. Nothing is as efficient as gasoline. It's liquid, like explosive.
Correct.
It's got like so much. Nothing is going to be that efficient. Silicon Valley land buyers, secret Silicon Valley land buyers buying up 52,000 acres of farmland northeast of the San Francisco Bay Area around Travis Air Force in Solano County. A lot of people thought these were Chinese buyers that were trying to spy on the Air Force. This $800 million investment from some of the richest people in California, venture capital, just very, very, very rich people in order to create a new city for people to live outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. So what do you think about Flannery Associates and the city, Mason?
I think this is a pure demonstration of ego. Now, it could be really brilliant. Like they're creating a new settlement outside of San Francisco, which San Francisco is a city that's about to collapse on itself. There's just no way that it can maintain that incredibly high level of cost, while at the same time, tech is really degrading in there. As in, like, there's competition with Facebook now, right? So Facebook no longer has a monopoly. Like it's gonna lose its strength, and it's going to have to degrade as a city. It's smart to make a competitor. At the same time, when you look at this, I'm gonna read this slowly. Shramik, a 36-year-old former Goldman Sachs trader, in a group of tech's most recognizable names, including Mark Anderson, Lauren Powell Jobs, Michael Moretz of Sequoia Capital, and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman. What I noticed, not a single construction person, not a single civil engineer. All of it is just tech magnates that think they're smart.
They can hire these people, dude. They're rich.
I know, but you would think one of the founders would at least have some idea of civil engineering or construction. That's all I know. I just noticed that flaw in none of their founders have any subject matter expertise in that.
Plan for the city. People probably have gone to China and seen some of these, but they have these like smart cities where they get an area out in China and they build it, everything, modern EVs, everything, sensors and lights and everything. Here, they've seen that and they don't want to do the city of tomorrow. They want to do a retro city that will be recognized by someone from 100 years ago. It's the city of yesterday, and they're going to have row houses. So the adjoining, would you live there, Mason? Would you live in the city of yesterday?
No.
Why not?
It's in California.
Okay. So you don't want to pay the taxes, or?
I don't think I would live there. Again, yeah, maybe they know everything about the future city, but I just have no desire to live in a place where I'm guessing I wouldn't have anything in common with the founders as far as values go.
You said you love technology. I mean, these people have been making and around technology their whole career.
LinkedIn co-founder. He made a website. That guy's not a tech guru. He made a website that was scalable. He made a lot of money. He's a great business person. That guy probably doesn't know shit. Sorry.
Why?
His best product is a website.
I mean, it's like acquired by Microsoft for
That's great.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean,
just because something makes money doesn't mean it's impressive technology.
I mean, not everybody has to do the exact same thing that you do.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that his technology isn't impressive. It made money, It's very profitable. I'm a customer. I pay a subscription to LinkedIn.
So basically, you're saying anyone who's made a website, you have no respect for.
No, I do respect them. I think he did a great job. I'm just saying that making a website doesn't really make you capable of building a city from scratch.
He's not building it with his fucking hands. He's using his hundreds of millions of dollars that he made from selling LinkedIn to buy land and then pay construction workers to make it.
I understand that. I just would not invest in it. I just don't think that LinkedIn is impressive as like it's a good website. I could make it, but the brand is what he has. What his value is brand value, not technology value. It's good, it's effective, and that's the most important thing about technology is that it should function.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm rambling, I guess, but I'm just saying I'm not that impressed with these guys. I don't think that these are the right. If I were to,
it's their money.
I know, I agree. I'm just saying I think they're going to fail. It just to me looks like a bunch of people who are arrogant, who have no business doing what they're doing, and are setting themselves up to fail. If they succeed, great. And I would love to visit their place. A retro city sounds amazing. If there's a way to have a city where there's no light pollution and I can actually see the stars, amazing. But I doubt that's the case. I just think they're going to fail.
What does that mean?
I think they're going to lose most of their money.
Going to lose their money? These are like the richest people in the world. This is like nothing to them.
I think in this case, they're going to lose that investment. I think it's going to be a bad investment.
Okay.
I hope they succeed.
I think they just have a concept that they want to create. They're not looking at it as like a do or die investment.
Cool.
You know?
In that case, it's
this isn't like a startup. These are people who are already rich.
I would love to see it. The one thing I would like is, and I think China has places like this, more pedestrian-friendly cities, less car-centric cities. So if they do something like that, that'd be pretty cool.
The modern cities that they're designing, it's on the surface is all pedestrian, and all the cars are like under the surface, like a big parking garage, essentially.
That's cool.
That's the future. So, and then there will be EVs so that there's not as many fumes and everything.
It'd be cool to see what they come up with. I'll visit it, but to me, the fact that this crack team didn't hire a single,
how do you know who they hired, man?
Or I'm saying in their founding core didn't have it. I don't know. It seems like a flaw.
They're not a founding team. They're like the board. They're the investors.
That's founding.
Anyway, all right, whatever. Interesting analysis on a lot of things from John and Mason. Real veteran news. I am wrapping up the video now. It's been fun. Been a long one. A lot of editing. That's going to have to happen. But
sorry,
we'll get there. You got anything you'd like to say farewell?
I rambled enough, but I'll give you my final thought. People catastrophize things, right? So even if any of these programs fail, the U.S. is not going to collapse. When I talk about a U.S. economic collapse, again, I think we'll have 1,000% inflation over a 10-year period. That's not even as bad as the Weimar Republic experience at the end of World War I. It could be a lot worse. So even that is not catastrophic. And so I should probably stop being so much of a doomsdayer as I am.
How are you going to get attention for yourself?
That's why I don't get attention.
All right, we did a great job, Mason. Looking forward to having you back. Looking forward to doing the four-way thing. We'll get everyone together, do a good talk with everybody. But good to get to know you here, and thanks for playing. That's it for this week, and we'll get back next week. See you later. Bye.